Welcome, everyone. Again, thank you for being with us this morning. This is our last school nurse regional update for the 24-25 school year. So we appreciate all the time that you've been with us this year. As you can see on the agenda, today we are getting to hear from Brianna Rice, who is a registered dietitian and involved in community education through the Chelan Douglas Health District. After Brianna, we'll hear from, I'm sorry, I have the wrong thing up. Sorry. After Brianna, we'll hear from Dr. Wallace. And after Dr. Wallace, we'll hear from Kathy with our regional updates. So I apologize. I thought I had updated the slide, but it's incorrect. As always, our objectives and goals for these meetings are to learn more about resources in our area, learn more about opportunities to um, support our students and their health and um, safeguard them while they are with us at school. Um, and of course, the framework for NASN is down here with the quality improvements, leadership, public health or community health and care coordination. And so today we're um, looking at the framework with public and community health and quality improvement. Again, just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, so please keep yourself muted. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat. Sheila and I monitor the chat and we'll make sure that your questions get announced or out there to be answered, or you can always raise your hand. And if you have any questions about getting clock hours for these meetings, please feel free to email me. All right. Let's go ahead and move our time over to Brianna. Uh, Brianna Rice is a registered dietitian with the Chelan Douglas Health District. She has a background in nutrition and human physiology with previous experience across several areas of dietetics. Currently, her work is centered on public health and pediatric nutrition, with a focus on providing families and the broader community with accessible, evidence-based nutrition education and resources. So, Brianna, we're really glad that you could be with us today, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. So you should be able to share your screen.
Let's see. Well, once. All right. There we go. Sure. All right. Are we good? Can you see my screen? Perfect. So let me
We are able to see it, but it isn't in the slide presentation mode. So there we go. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So, I'm Brianna. Like you said, I'm a registered dietitian. And today we're going to talk a little bit about allergies, eating disorders, and kind of the role of social media in student health. I'm really excited to be here today. So let's get started. Like I said, we're going to talk about all of these and eating disorders, diet trends, and social media and nutrition are all going to kind of tie in together a little bit. But the first topic we're going to cover is actually food allergies. So before jumping into this one, just so I can kind of get a lay of the land, how many students would you say on average at your schools are you working with that do have some sort of food allergy? And you can put it in the chat, you can raise your hand, whatever works best.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, how many students do you kind of see at your schools that have food allergies?
So Brianna, in the chat, we have Ben, who is at the Pascal Sherman Indian School. He has 3 at his school. Sarah Kruger from Wilson Creek said 5 to 10% of students yearly. Daisy Tovar, who's a migrant nurse case manager, um, maybe 10%. We have another 10 to 15% up in OMAC, approximately 3% over in Moses Lake. Danny Ibarra said 5 to 10%. Tiffany up in Okanagan, 5 to 10%. Amber over in Kashmir, 31%, or 31 with anaphylaxis. There's 20 in Chelan. Warden, about 5% from Jana. And then Michelle, 20 with actual allergies, 236 with food sensitivity.
Okay.
And then there's about 10% with those kind of health conditions in Quincy.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so kind of a wide range, but probably somewhere between that 5-10%. So thank you guys. So kind of just like off the bat, what I like to, this is something that I kind of explain to parents and families, is the allergy versus the intolerance, right? Sometimes I've noticed that families will use these kind of interchangeably sometimes. So when I provide education, I kind of break it down to more of the most basic kind of thing. So allergy, we're talking about the immune system, and typically intolerance, we're talking about the digestive system. Allergies can be fatal, life-threatening. Intolerances are uncomfortable, as probably many of us know, but usually are not life-threatening. And sometimes that can help the parents and families kind of understand the difference between the two. One that is a little bit more unique, and I don't know if you have any kiddos that have this, but is celiac disease. It's a lot more rare, but it is actually neither. It is more of a autoimmune disorder. And so sometimes, I'll get a kiddo that's allergic to wheat versus a kiddo that has celiac disease. So we have some differences there, but some of the landscape, which kind of you guys have echoed, as we have that 5 to 10% that might have a food allergy. So recent data shows that about 8% of kids may have a food allergy. So about 1 in 13 potentially. And then with that being said, only a little over half of those have a physician diagnosed allergy, or have seen like an allergy specialist to get tested for that allergy. Something important to note is that if a kiddo has one food allergy, there's a 40% will have multiple allergies. So something to kind of just watch out for sure. Something as I was looking into allergy diagnoses was access to allergy specialists is kind of a concern. So that 4.7% that have that physician diagnosed allergy, they went back in that study and pulled information about like healthcare claims and found that only 0.6 of the kiddos that have the documented physician diagnosed allergy, only 0.6 were insured through Medicaid. So that definitely brings up some questions about access and equity as far as those diagnoses are going. So keeping that in mind as far as like what your region looks like and what access looks like in your region is important. Food allergies are on the rise. We have seen a 50% increase in food allergy diagnosis from 2007 to 2021. And then the incidence of peanut allergy has actually tripled from 2001 to 2017. So we are seeing an increase. It is significant. There's a lot of theories as to potentially why that's happening. One is just that, we are diagnosing allergies a bit more on a spectrum, right? You don't have to have an anaphylaxis response to be diagnosed with an allergy. So it could be potentially diagnosis is increasing for, less severe allergies. In my experience with young kids, a lot of families are unsure of when to introduce allergies and like when is safe and when is recommended. So that potentially is adding to it as well. So that's a bit of the landscape that we see. And of course, there are nutrition implications to that. Anytime that we have to eliminate a food from the diet, potentially that's going to impact a kiddo's nutrition status. So, especially when we're thinking about kids that have those multiple allergies, right? If you have an allergy to dairy and wheat, that's a significant amount of foods that are going to need to be removed from the diet. And so then, making sure we're keeping an eye on growth, and making sure that they're eating adequately to be able to continue to grow appropriately. Also, kids with food allergies can become picky eaters. I don't know if y'all are seeing this at your schools. Feel free to put something in the chat if you have a story or anything like that. But sometimes that can be due to fears around eating. Maybe that kid had a reaction where they had to go to the hospital. That's scary for adults. So for a kiddo, that's probably especially scary. And so that fear can sometimes even further limit intake, which is something that definitely needs to be worked through. But it can definitely lead to more picky eating. And then of course, it's not just nutrition, right? There are social impacts of food allergies as well. Something that I found that was kind of a staggering statistic to me was that about 1 in 3 children with a food allergy reports being bullied to that food out because of that food allergy. So they're having a tougher time. Kiddos that have more allergies or allergies to 2 or more foods, half of those kids have reported being bullied related to that food allergy. So there's definitely some social impacts for that kiddo specifically. And then for the whole family too, there are definitely impacts as well. So moms with kids with food allergies who are under 5 have significantly higher blood pressure. And then also greater psychosocial stress than moms and families that do not have food allergies. The other thing that comes up as well as far as social impacts go is that kids with food allergies are less likely to go to things like birthday parties or go over to their friend's house and things like that. So a little bit more of that social isolation for these kiddos. And so just kind of keeping an eye on those things and how are my kids with food allergies doing, not just nutritionally, not just how they're doing avoiding, things that might cause a reaction, but also are they being impacted socially? So how do you support students? And I'm sure y'all are doing a lot of this already at your schools. But checking in, does your school have a wellness committee or wellness policies with allergy safety? Do parents know what they're allowed to bring into the classrooms and what they shouldn't be bringing? Who's trained to respond to allergic reaction and who gets education on this? Is it education that happens yearly? Do we need refreshers? That kind of thing. And then just trying to help students understand and manage their fear around allergies at school. it can be stressful for families, for the kids, especially, you know, those younger ages when maybe this is some of the first times that, you know, they're going to be without their parents, and there's a lot of fear around that. So just trying to be a calming and supportive presence is huge. And I know you guys are already doing that. And then, of course, advocating for changes. If you see something that could help support student safety, continue to advocate for that always. Okay, moving on to social media. So I want to know, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand or unmute. But what platforms are you guys seeing your students use the most? We got to vote for TikTok. YouTube. So we have TikTok and YouTube. I know that when I've done presentations before. Oh, can you please repeat the question? Yes. So what like social media platforms are your students using that you see? Ooh, no cell phones. I like it. Snapchat, okay. Right, so maybe a bit of a variety. I know when I've done presentations before, we get a lot of TikTok, kind of, you know, the usual suspects, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, a lot of those. So thank you guys. So a recent study on TikTok found that only about 2% of specific nutrition information on TikTok was accurate. So that is including like information that it's only 100% accurate. It's not leaving out important information. It's not misinformation. And so only 2% was 100% accurate nutrition information, which as a dietitian is a little concerning to me. But it also shows us that the information that if our young kids are on social media, they're not getting really good information as far as nutrition goes, unless they're specifically seeking out like nutrition professionals, right? So that was like a staggering statistic to me, and really showed me that like, okay, like we need to you know, think about what we're seeing there. Some of the information may contribute to body dysmorphia and potentially disordered eating behaviors. And some of the information, again, you do have to like, you know, seek it out. Like we were talking about this morning, it is an algorithm, right? But some of that information can promote unrealistic expectations of what, you know, our bodies are supposed to look like or do look like, and kind of some harmful diet trends that come out of that. So it is something to keep in mind. I'll talk about it in a couple slides, but a kind of new section of TikTok has popped up that I wanted to talk about, and we'll get to it. But first, one of the things that when I'm talking to like groups of students is we always go through social media red flags, because it's something that I think our young people, you know, need to know what they're looking at and how to tell whether something is really good information or whether it might not be so good information. So these are some of the things that I talk about with them. So the first one, are they trying to sell you a product? Specifically with nutrition, are they trying to sell you a supplement or a pill or something like that? Because we know that a lot of supplements are not third-party tested. We know that they don't always contain what they say they contain. So if someone's trying to sell you something, you don't really know, as far as nutrition supplement, whether it's something that is healthy, whether it's something that is going to have what it says it has in it, and that kind of thing. And then the second part of that is if they're trying to sell you something, then they may not have your best interest in mind. And so keeping that kind of in the front of their brain. Anytime that someone is talking about nutrition and it's this all or nothing approach. So if someone says carbs are really bad for you, don't eat any carbs, that's all or nothing, right? We want our kids to be eating from all different food groups and eating a variety of food because we know that that is how they get all of the nutrients they need and they get their energy. And so if someone is telling you to cut out an entire food group or you can't ever eat this food, we know that that's all or nothing, and that's not based in health. And then if something is not evidence-based, or I usually explain what anecdotal means to them, but if something is, that single story, right, of success, that doesn't mean, maybe it works for that person, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody else. And so explaining that to them, and kind of going through that. And then of course, this is an old one, but it's a good one. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? So I think just advocating for social media and media literacy in general to be taught is really important because we know that kids younger and younger are being exposed to whether it's social media or screen time or, just news in general, right? We're seeing them exposed to that at a younger and younger age. And so we need to advocate for teaching how to look critically into that information, so that they can make good decisions and make educated decisions based on that. Okay, so popular diet trends. This one is kind of exciting, for me at least. So some of these you might see in more of your older students versus your really young students, but has anybody heard of like dry scooping before? This is in relation to dietary supplements. Okay, so this one gained some popularity a few years ago, and it is when you have like a or maybe a pre-workout powder, and instead of mixing it with water, students and people are just like downing the powder instead of mixing it with water. Yeah, so as you could probably expect, that's pretty dangerous for a lot of reasons. It also like doesn't sound appetizing at all, right? But it is something that gains some popularity, especially kind of in more of like the workout and like weightlifting groups, I guess. But yeah, it can be really harmful for the kidneys, especially because you're having this really concentrated powder, right? That's not diluted. So it can be hard on your kidneys, as well as cause stomach aches and a whole host of issues for your GI system. So that can be a problem, as well as just like accidentally inhaling that powder, right? Like that's definitely not good for you either. So that is something. The other thing kind of in relation to dietary supplements is just that like we're kind of seeing protein being added to everything. You'll see it online, protein coffee and things like that, where we're just adding protein to things that maybe we don't need to be. But this one isn't harmful in the sense of added protein if you have, working kidneys and you're a healthy individual, having excess protein isn't the worst thing. But a lot of the times that protein is coming from a protein powder, which we want to make sure we know dietary supplements are not well regulated and not regulated really at all by the FDA. So, we want to just keep an eye on dietary supplement intake here is really kind of the main key. The
Brianna,
excessive, yes.
sorry, do you want any questions now, or do you want us to wait until the end of your presentation to ask them?
We can do questions now. That's really fine.
Sorry. Okay. We had a question about any research on cardiac effects of these energy drinks in young students, young kids.
Yes. So there is some research out there. We know that caffeine intake at a younger age, so under 18, your upper limit for caffeine intake should only be about 100 milligrams. And so we know that there's no energy drink on the market right now that's under 100 milligrams for 16 ounces. So we do know that it is really hard on their hearts, and so we definitely recommend away from energy drinks, away from, especially if the kid is about to go out and maybe do their sport, or go work out. We want to be really careful, because that can have cardiac impacts. As far as like specific long-term studies, I am not sure. I haven't looked into that as much with like younger kids, but we do know that the caffeine intake is a huge problem. Yeah.
Brianna, maybe after our presentation or our meeting today, you and I can connect and get some research information out to the nurses, because I can send a follow-up email to them. So
Absolutely. I would love to do that. Yeah.
awesome.
It's
All right.
definitely a problem. And with that excessive caffeine intake, the other thing we see is like I've done presentations where I've talked about energy drinks and we go through the added sugars and that kind of thing. And kids have come back with like, well, this one, it doesn't have any sugar and it's 0 calories. And I go through and I explain that, like, okay, yes, but that also means that the only thing your body is absorbing is that caffeine, and it's going to hit you really, really hard. And so we do talk about that. The other thing with caffeine intake is that, as far as nutrition goes, an excess of caffeine can result in decreased calcium absorption. And so when we're thinking of growing students that are, currently growing their bone mineral density, the last thing we want is for calcium absorption to be decreased. And so that's something too to kind of keep an eye on. And then the other diet trends that we are seeing that kind of will go into the next section on eating disorders, is dietary restriction. So dietary restriction can look like a lot of different things. It could be skipping meals, picky eating, or following kind of common diet trends like really low carb or keto or things like that. All of that kind of falls under the umbrella of dietary restriction. Two that have come up on social media have been skinny talk and Ozempic. And skinny talk is something that is a little concerning at the moment, for me. So, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but TikTok has a lot of different sections. So we have like book talk, and I know there's like nurse talk, and you can find the things that are positive, but you can also find things that are negative. And so skinny talk really is a section of TikTok that is promoting some really kind of harmful behaviors. So a lot of the videos are about like how to skip meals to stay thin and eating, 1,000 calories, less than 1,000 calories a day. And just like really framing hunger and being hungry as a negative thing. And that like if you are just disciplined enough, you'll be thin. And once you're thin, you'll be happy. Which we know is not the case. And when we have growing students, the last thing we want is to have dietary restriction. So that's skinny talk. And then Ozempic, which is obviously a play on Ozempic, is something that has come up on social media where kids are mixing like oats with water and like blending it like a smoothie and then drinking that as a meal replacement. The reasoning behind this is that it has a lot of fiber, right? And fiber makes you feel full. But this doesn't have any kind of quality nutrition other than fiber. And so it'll make you feel full, but it's not actually giving you any nutrition. And so it's something that kind of came out of this like skinny talk trend. So it is something to keep an eye on. So that kind of leads us into our next section, which is eating disorders. So what are eating disorders? I'm sure y'all are fairly familiar, but it's a serious illness that really is a significant change to someone's eating behaviors. Typically, someone with an eating disorder is obsessed or becomes fixated on weight loss, controlling their food intake, their weight, or their body shape. There's a whole bunch of different types, so I just have a few here, but probably the most commonly seen kind of in the media and well known are going to be our anorexia nervosa and bulimia. We also have ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, binge eating disorder, and then OSFED, which is kind of a catch-all for eating disorders that don't fit the exact mold of the ones listed above, so other specified feeding or eating disorders. Something to note about ARFID is that this one, although it does fall under the category of eating disorder, usually this one is not as fixated or obsessed with weight loss. We don't really see that. ARFID more is, we're thinking maybe about that kiddo with an allergy that had that adverse event and now is scared to eat anything. And so it has more to do with fear or even like a physiological issue with like swallowing. But we do see this as like, we see growth faltering and just an absolute like avoiding eating. So it does fall under eating disorder, but it's not quite the same, I would say. And then some verbiage that I'll use is eating disorder versus disordered eating. So an eating disorder is that clinical diagnosis. But then when I'm talking about disordered eating, that sits more on a spectrum, right? Between what we would consider normal eating or typical eating, and then that diagnosable eating disorder. So some statistics to kind of get a lay of the land. Girls from age 6 to 10 start worrying about their weight, which is pretty young. And then by 14, 60 to 70% have tried to lose weight at that point. So again, that's pretty young to be trying to lose weight. And then 77% of kids and adolescents as young as 12 say that they dislike their body. So the reason kind of I want to bring this up is because whether or not, we're seeing those diagnosable eating disorders, we are seeing body dissatisfaction and this trying to lose weight at a young age. And then another stat that I wanted to pull in as well was that fewer than 6% of people with eating disorders are medically diagnosed as underweight. And so when I say, I tell people all the time, eating disorders don't have a look. And this is kind of what I mean, right? Is you can have an eating disorder and be a quote normal weight. And so keeping that in mind, that we have high body dissatisfaction, and eating disorders don't have a look. So kind of having to kind of piece out that information to figure out what's going on with the kiddos. So this is information from the Healthy Youth Survey that was done in 2023, I believe. So this is for Chelan County, and I only have Chelan and Douglas, but I can send out the other stats from some of the other counties that are on the call if that would be helpful for y'all. So I can do that. But so these are some disordered eating like screening questions. And we have a high percentage of students that have tried to use exercise as a form of weight loss, or to keep from gaining weight, both in 8th and I want to say this is 10th grade. Yeah. So 8th and 10th grade, we have over half of students have tried to do that. The one that I found kind of alarming when I was looking through this was this one that is second from the bottom, has tried to vomit, use laxatives, or eat certain foods or liquids intentionally to lose weight or to keep from gaining weight. So 7.5% of students said that they have tried to do this. And these are fairly extreme behaviors. And I'll go on to Douglas County and then we can kind of chat about it too. But Douglas County also had responses from their 12th graders. And so we kind of see the same thing with over half of our students that are trying to exercise to lose weight. And then when we go down to, this vomit, use laxatives, or eat certain foods or liquids, we see that we're at like 11%. So when I first saw that, those stats were kind of, again, staggering to me, but I wanted to ask, do you guys see any of this? Is this surprising to you? Is it something that, would you see, 11% and think, yeah, maybe that's correct? What do you think? And feel free to unmute or put it in the chat, whatever works better for you.
Hi, I wanted to say that like I specifically, this is Daisy Tovar, sorry. In my conversations with some parents, I have had parents express concern about like their kids' weight, I think specifically because there's a a lot of kids who are overweight or even obese. And I think that what I've heard from parents is, parents don't have a lot of education on this. So then they just kind of don't know how to go about addressing these things. And then also their kids know that they have, maybe a little bit of weight to lose. And so then these kids also have access to, their social media on their phones. So it's like the parents aren't really informed. The kids are getting their information from social media. So I think that, just from some conversations I've had, kids are sometimes resorting to these unhealthy tactics to lose the weight, and parents don't really know how to address it. So I wouldn't say that I've come across anyone who's been officially diagnosed, but definitely with conversations and parents describing what they see going on, there's definitely some you know, methods of disordered eating in a lot
Yeah.
of kids, unfortunately.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think that it kind of is that perfect storm a little bit, right? You have maybe families that don't know what to look for or don't know how to maybe go about, trying to promote some healthy behaviors in the home. Um, and then kiddos having access to the social media or families having access, right, to all of that information. And so I think, yeah, it's kind of that perfect storm sometimes.
So Brianna, we had a few responses in the chat as well that several have seen students skipping meals or go without eating a lot. Seeing students take fasting to an extreme. There was a comment from, unfortunately, I'm not surprised these kids aren't making smart, well-informed decisions at this time. It's more about looks and fitting
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And oh, Daisy just also listed also using other forms of coping with hunger like caffeine and vaping to
Yeah.
distract them from eating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like there are so many things that pop up over time too of like, oh, kids are using this to try to limit their hunger or, these other coping mechanisms like you mentioned. So yeah, it's honestly it's such a tough time to be a young person, to be honest. And I think some of these stats and your experiences really speak to that about, kids really want to fit in and they'll do just about anything to do that. And so um, I think, yeah, there are still some things we can do, obviously, to help, but, educating families on signs and symptoms and, healthy ways to help their kids, I think are huge. And that's part of what I try to do. So I'm glad I'm here today. Um, so some signs and symptoms. So preoccupation with that weight loss and food, kind of like I mentioned before. Eliminating entire food groups. So like I mentioned before, oh, I don't eat carbs. I can't eat any carbs. That is something that like kind of rings a bell. Developing food rituals. This is something that is more of like, if I didn't see someone make it, I can't eat it. Or if I didn't see exactly how it was prepared, I'm afraid to eat it. It can also be my food has to be arranged a certain way on my plate. That goes back to more of that like control aspect and kind of some of that anxiety around food. So those are kind of examples of what food rituals would be. Drinking excessive water or non-caloric beverages like black coffee and those caffeines that kind of decrease your hunger signs or hunger signals. Um, Trying to avoid meal times or any situations that involve food. Frequent checking in the mirror for perceived flaws. We typically call this like body checking. Sometimes it's a way that kids will, and adults too, kind of check for weight changes or body changes, which as a young person, your body is changing really fast, and that can kind of add some anxiety to their lives a bit. Anytime that there's weight-based bullying, we do worry about what lengths kids will go to avoid that, right? So some of those wanting to fit in, and that kind of thing. And then changes in academic performance, potentially related to that preoccupation with food, weight loss, but also if they're not eating enough to fuel their brains and concentrate in school, they're going to have changes in their performance. So prevention, of course, trying to create a school environment where everyone feels safe and welcome, which you guys are for sure doing already. Something that I do, typically for kids, is usually we're not addressing weight at all. We're talking about healthy habits. How can we add more fruits and vegetables? And what are some what physical activity do you like? And let's try some new things like around that. I usually in practice am not saying, hey, we're gonna try to lose weight. We don't focus on that for kids. It's more health promoting behaviors. Of course, discuss media literacy and the use of enhanced images. Most of the photos and things that we see have been enhanced. And people don't look like that on a day-to-day basis. And so reminding kids of that. Ensuring that any nutrition education that's being provided is using like sensitive language. So kind of something that is being used more often is like someone in a smaller body versus someone in a larger body, kind of helping kids reduce like the negative connotations with some of like the word fat and things like that. Like we want to be really sensitive to that. The other thing that I typically talk about here to kiddos is like we could all eat the exact same meals every single day, every single one of us, and we would still look different and our bodies would still be different shapes, right? Even if we all ate the same meals. And so just having that conversation of we all are different and we all look different, and that's good. We're all unique, right? And then having guidelines for health and PE classes, especially if weight and body composition are going to be measured at all. How do we do that in a way that, that kid feels safe and this is a private environment? And, can we try to encourage kids to not talk about this outside of class? Like this is a private information. So those. And then just some last kind of things to think about. What are the policies and procedures that your school has in place for mental health concerns? Is there education provided to parents on these topics or other mental health conditions? Do other staff know what to look for? Do teachers know what to look for? And then are there guidelines in place for how to best support students that are in recovery, either from an eating disorder or any other type of mental illness? And then what are our prevention measures that are in place? Another example of a wellness committee is like how they can help make positive changes with health and nutrition in your school. So do we have any questions?
So we did have a question, and I wanted to wait because I knew we're summing it up with that last slide there. But we did have a question regarding, Daisy wrote, is any of this a required topic to be covered in nutrition class to educate kids on physiological risks of not eating well? I was also going to ask you if this is something that you do come to schools and do presentations on as well. So I'm not sure if you can speak to a required topic in class, but.
So my understanding is it is not a required topic in class. There is some like nutrition education, but it goes a lot back to like my plate and kind of the basics of like make sure you eat fruits and vegetables, which is important. But it definitely doesn't go into any of the risks of not eating well and kind of long-term effects. I am trying to get into more classrooms and do this education. I've had a couple of classrooms reach out and say, hey, we do want this presentation and this education. So I am excited to be doing more of it, but I'm trying to get into more of the classrooms and try to educate students on this. And just that like what they do now will impact the rest of their lives with nutrition. So, yes, I wish it was more of a required topic. I really do, but unfortunately it's not.
And then we have Kathy posted in the chat the OSPI health and physical education standards.
Mm-hmm.
So that way people can review those as well. And one of our nurses sent me a link to one of those studies on the effects of caffeine. So I'll share that with you later, and we'll work on getting some more of those types of studies and that information out to the rest of the group as well. So thank you so much. Any other questions for Brianna?
Penny has a question in there
Oh,
about food
sorry, I didn't even see
allergies.
that.
Oh
I
yeah.
have a question. It is not too late for that, Penny.
Okay, so can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, I have a student that I'm going to try to be very politically correct how I say this, that I don't believe has the full range of allergies that she says she does.
Mhm.
But obviously I have to trust that when she says she's having symptoms, she's having symptoms. But she will say that her tongue is swelling and I never see any symptoms. But even from, there's supposedly a new issue where an orange, she is, that is the latest anaphylaxis supposedly is related to oranges. So even if a student has an orange from across the room at their desk, she will say that she's going into anaphylaxis. And I know just from previous education that it's pretty rare to have, that yes, food allergens can be airborne occasionally, but how do you approach that with, and the mom falls for it every time the kid gets to go home and be monitored. I mean, it's ongoing. What do you suggest? Because obviously I try to educate without ever seeming like I want to call, BS. But anyway, it's very frustrating because it's that fine balance between taking it for face value because this kid says that she's having them and there's symptoms that I can't necessarily judge. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's really tough. That's really tough. I would say what kind of comes to mind immediately is this kiddo probably has some fear around food potentially that started out very, very real. And potentially now is maybe taking it a little farther. But I think in this instance, trying to, and I know we don't have great, like allergy specialist resources in our area, but doing our best to try to get that kiddo into for allergy testing. So that way we have that to fall back on of like, okay, well, your results showed that you don't have an allergy to this. You have an allergy to, say, peanuts, but oranges are okay. And then that way the family also has that information. And then hopefully can get on the same page with the school district, so that we can, make sure, one, that she's not restricting foods unnecessarily, right? Because that's going to lead to a lot of issues later on. But also hopefully decreasing that anxiety for family. Yeah, that would kind of be my starting point, but I know we don't have great resources for allergy specialists here, so.
Yeah, it's tough. And the sibling used to go to my school and went on to high school and also had allergies. Again, never saw any outward symptoms. And that student now has dropped out of school because mom just doesn't think it's safe. It's just this, I can see the same, like I want yeah, I think you're right. I think I should help to really encourage continued allergy testing. I know sibling had allergy testing and mom didn't agree with it. So but I will encourage it with this child too. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really tough. Yeah, I think it's tough when family doesn't always agree with the diagnoses and the results. That can be a really tough, like, kind of conversation to have. Um, but yeah.
I had a quick question for you, Brianna. Unless somebody else has a question. I was going to ask, you had talked about um, advocating for changes um, like with uh, just for foods or circumstances in our schools that could potentially be cause risks for our students. Those wellness committees are great, but sometimes when we're advocating for these things, we're also asked to come up with ideas for fixing them. So what are some of those resources out there to help with um, that we can fall back on or we can refer people to help with some of these issues, like with the nutrition in the schools? Um, they're pretty limited in what they can and can't do. So how are we going to help them, or what are some people we are going to refer them to help our situations?
Yes, definitely. That is a great question. And so I think one of the things with those wellness committees, some of the successful ones that I have seen um, bring in like other community members. And so like um, maybe uh, someone from Confluence or, someone from the health district, and bringing those people together so that it doesn't all fall on you guys. I know you guys are asked to do an incredible amount of things. So I think bringing in people to help, but then also um, kind of knowing the referral systems for some of these kiddos, and um, what other services are in the area. And I know that at the health district we have like a community resource like fact sheet that I can send over as well. But yeah, I think just like community collaboration, so that way too, it doesn't all fall back on you guys and the teachers. And at least in my experience, a lot of the times it falls back on the same people, kind of over and over again. So if there's anything, we can do anything else we can do to support, we absolutely will. So
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time with us. Thank you so, so much. I am seeing a couple more things in the chat. Another resource of a dietitian. Um, so for the other groups in the people in the chat, dietitian who sees students with disordered eating at one of their schools. So resource for others to reach out to too. So thank you for sharing that, Shelley. So if there are any other questions for Brianna, I can get you her contact information. We'll have her slides available in our Google Drive for you to look at and refer to. And like I said, we will get that information, those resources, those studies out regarding caffeine effects on our students. So Brianna, thank you so much for being with us here today. We are so grateful for the information that you shared. And one of the things that we deal with as school nurses. So thank you for your time. We do have our next presenter is Dr. Wallace from the Chelan Douglas Health District, who is going to be giving us a public health update. So
Thank Thanks everyone. Thanks, Brianna. Nice to just tag off from one of our team members to another. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's see if I can grab
Can you
control
hang
of
on
the
for just a
screen.
second? Brianna, are you able
Sure.
to stop sharing?
Looks like I might be able to take it.
Take over there. Okay. Oh, thank you. All right. Thank you, Bree.
There we go. So we've been busy. I could spend much more than 30 minutes, but I've only got a little bit of time. So I thought I'd maybe go through quickly and then let you guys stop me with questions, or at the end leave time, because we've had a lot going on. We're planning and doing a lot of things. And it's fun. Summertime planning, getting ready for summer is fun. We're done with respiratory illness season. We do still have respiratory illnesses, so we're still watching, but we had a longer than usual season, and we had a lot more illness, more hospitalizations, unfortunately, more deaths this season. And with influenza having kind of a second spike in February, there were longer tails to the season. So based on the thresholds we use to declare the start of the respiratory illness season and then the end of the respiratory illness season, falling below threshold for 2 weeks, here on these slides of emergency room visits for influenza, COVID-19, and RSV, you'll see influenza and RSV had really long tails and extended all the way into May. We would have called the end of influenza season early to mid-April, having 2 weeks below that threshold. But RSV really bumped back up to threshold at the middle of April and remained there for a week. And then so 2 weeks below threshold for RSV was actually just last week. We've seen a couple cases floating around. So we hope that those remain low, and that COVID remains low. Interestingly, we did see, if we look at some of our local data, this is the data we've been compiling and following at Chelan Douglas, and for each of the health jurisdictions regionally, that you can see on the slide on the left, the top left, that tail with a little bit of an increase. This is looking at influenza-like illness. So not just influenza, but any cough, cold that presents to, in this case, primary care or urgent care. And throughout the season, influenza-like illness has been closely coupled to influenza. So you can see on the slide on the right, this is emergency room visits, but as influenza has gone up, influenza-like illness has gone up. But in April, they started to separate just a little bit. And so we're seeing more upper respiratory illness that's not influenza, a little bit more than we did throughout the season. The bottom graph is state level data and shows that we've got more rotavirus, enterovirus, metapneumovirus, parainfluenza virus. I misspoke. I don't think that's rotavirus. It is enterovirus and rhinovirus. Also, metapneumovirus, parainfluenza viruses, common cold viruses. But an increase in those, I think, is probably what's driving the kind of decoupling of influenza and influenza-like illness. But I maintain the question, do we have some pertussis out there? We haven't detected any abnormal influenza A strains, but we have had some pertussis reported to us. So one school district has 3 cases. 2 of those are linked. One of the cases is not linked. And so Chelan County showed back up on the pertussis map last week. Haven't seen any other cases aside from those 3. The school district has done a great job of pushing out notifications, information, both selectively with a small potentially involved group, but to the broader schools within the district as well. So we're following that closely and really appreciate collaboration, participation, and support there. It's given everybody involved the opportunity to brush off pertussis skills and kind of remind ourselves, that pertussis is vaccine preventable, especially for the youngest and the most um, seriously impacted. So babies can't get pertussis vaccine at 2, 4, 6 months, but until they build up their immunity, they're the most severely impacted. So kids less than a year of age, or I think by some measures 50% get hospitalized when they get pertussis and have significant breathing difficulties. So we try to protect families that have young infants, and that's why the vaccine schedule is targeted at newborns, and then you get a booster at 5 years and 11 to 12 years. But then because of the acellular formulation of the vaccine, immunity wanes after a couple years. So we actually start to see more cases in adolescents. So oftentimes middle school, high schoolers are actually more often affected, but they don't have as severe cases, and their illnesses appear like any other upper respiratory illness. So it's really tricky. And we've all been through it. Grant County, most recently, but Chelan and Douglas counties earlier in 2024 all got really good at pertussis. And so I hope that we don't have to exercise those skills as well as we did previously, but we're watching for it closely. Also watching for measles. So as an update, nationwide, we're above 1,000 cases. Those are distributed now among 31 states. Most of those cases, 92% of those cases, are associated with outbreaks where you have a large local population all experiencing an outbreak. Hospitalizations are quite high, so 128 hospitalizations, 13% of cases, and thus far 3 deaths that are considered preventable deaths because of the highly effective nature of the vaccine. If you look at vaccination status, 3% of cases, only 3% of cases have had up-to-date vaccination status. So that's consistent with about a 97% effectiveness, 97% effectiveness of the vaccine. But included in the cases that are not fully vaccinated are individuals whose vaccination status is unknown. A lot of this is based on state records of vaccination status. And for a large number of folks in Texas, they don't track vaccination status, or vaccination status to be included in that registry is voluntary, and so not everyone is tracked for vaccination status. So there is a degree of unknown vaccination status, especially for the Texas cases. And I think last time I looked at the Texas Department of Health website, it looked like 60% of cases were unvaccinated, and then another 30 to 40% vaccination status was unknown. But that's changed a little bit as investigations have been ongoing. The second link that I included here, and you guys should have active links when you get this PowerPoint, the MMWR article from late April was really helpful in explaining a lot of the detail of the case investigations that we've seen thus far. One important point that I saw and really appreciated they were able to draw out was that there have been 48 cases within this 1,024 number in the United States. 48 have been cases where they can tell that the individual contracted measles in another country and brought it to the United States. 44 of those individuals were individuals who are US residents, went to travel to another country where there's a higher incidence of measles, were not vaccinated, and then returned. So I've had questions, I've seen concerns about, is this because of people entering the United States without legal status, and the vast majority of cases that are contracted from outside of the United States are U.S. residents who are traveling and then coming back. 92. Interestingly, of those travelers, so 48 individuals went 44 individuals went outside of the United States, came back. Only 15 of those, so only a third of those, resulted in outbreaks or secondary cases. So when somebody travels to an area of higher measles incidence, returns, it's only if they're returning to a place where there's low immunity, low vaccination status, that it turns into an outbreak and spreads. So at this point in time, the herd immunity, or the high numbers of people with up-to-date immunity, is protecting from more outbreaks. But when people return from travel, bring measles back to an area or a community with low vaccination rates, that's where we see outbreaks occur. A lot of that we know, but the recent investigation confirms that. I had the chance to talk about tick-borne illness last night at our Department of Health, Board of Health meeting, and I was on Zoom, but I understand that I made a lot of people squirm in their seats in talking about ticks. And so if anybody squirms, I apologize. It was a fun presentation to give because I got to dust off a lot of my knowledge picked up in microbiology. And remember how much more common ticks were in North Carolina, where I trained and grew up, than out here. But this time of year, we do see a lot of ticks. We've got 3 ticks in Washington State that spread illness. So the Rocky Mountain wood tick, brown dog tick, and western black-legged tick. They spread a number of illnesses: Rocky Mountain spotted fever, tularemia that can be spread by ticks, but also just through any interaction with wildlife that is infected. And the Ixodes species of ticks, the western black-legged tick that we have, spreads Lyme disease. We have very few cases of Lyme disease, but it does exist on the eastern slope of the Cascades. So usually you find this tick in western Washington, Lyme disease in western Washington, but it does extend to western Okanagan County, Chelan County, Kittitas County, and those counties on the eastern slope of the Cascades. Long list of illnesses. Didn't go through all. Many of these illnesses initially present with a fever, but then can progress to complications pretty quickly. So it's very helpful for an individual to know that they've been bitten by a tick, although people don't always know that they've been bitten by a tick. So the workup of a fever without any other known source is oftentimes to ask about travel to areas where there might be ticks, camping trips, anything of that sort, in working up a febrile illness. Interesting, there are some interesting presentations. So there's the relapsing fever that kind of presents as a typical, you have a fever for 4 to 7 days and then it goes away, but then a week or 2 later, the fever comes back and it goes back and forth like that. Interesting, like that's in Washington State, transmitted by a soft tick. So not our classic ticks that I just described, but these little tiny 3-millimeter ticks. I think I have a picture of it. Yeah, there's the soft tick, 3 millimeters in size, only take about 5 to 20 minutes to get their meal, whereas other ticks stay attached for 1 to 2 days. Those little ticks like to live in rodent nests up in the mountains. And so if you're camping, if you're staying in a cabin or somewhere, they will love to come out at night from the rodent nest, crawl into your sleeping bag with you, eat for 5 to 20 minutes, and then go about their business. You usually don't even know you've been bitten, but then you discover you have relapsing fever after a couple of weeks. Tick paralysis is also really interesting. So western dog tick, Rocky Mountain wood tick, These ticks release a toxin and it causes paralysis, this classic ascending paralysis that starts at the legs and hands and moves up. And is very similar to Guillain-Barré, other paralytic illnesses. But when the person presents, if you find the tick, take the tick off, the symptoms go away in a very short amount of time. I've only seen one case, but it was pretty remarkable how quickly the person's paralysis began to disappear. So all that to say, tick-borne illnesses are very, very uncommon. Only, less than 4 cases per year of confirmed Lyme disease. Many of these you go ahead and treat on suspicion because you don't want to wait the weeks that it takes for lab results to come back sometimes. And treatment is relatively easy early on. But these are very, very rare. Most tick bites don't result in a serious illness. They can result in a localized infection or inflammation and irritation. So it's certainly important to provide basic wound treatment. Prevention is something to share with your families and your kids, especially as kids are playing outside this time of year. Long sleeve shirts, long pants. If you're really going to be out in the woods, coating clothing with permethrin or applying DEET or eucalyptus oil. And then checking for ticks as soon as you get back inside or back from your hiking trip or camping trip, or even out on the playground. There could be kids picking up ticks when they're out. If you do find a tick, I think this is certainly within the scope. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong, of you guys in your health rooms, but remove a tick immediately after you find it. You want to do it carefully. You want to use tweezers or forceps, grasp the head, and pull it straight out. Don't twist it or jerk it because you really want to get all of the mouthpieces that host the saliva that carries the illness. And then wash the wound, wash hands, apply basic wound care, and then inform the child or the individual to watch out for any signs of illness for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and include this tick exposure in your report to your healthcare provider. Early treatment when illnesses do arise is essential to prevent complications. And so we advise anybody, of course, with a febrile illness and a rash to seek health care, and then follow what healthcare providers advise about treatment. These links can get you to a recent foodborne illness presentation that I provided, but more so Corey Lawson, our new deputy administrator at CDHD, and Elizabeth Austin, who's our regional epidemiologist, provided. Basic take-home story was, if you suspect foodborne illness outbreak, report it. Even if it's one individual case of a GI illness, it could be the first case that helps us investigate a local food source or a common source that could get a lot of other people sick. We advise our healthcare providers to test because we really need a confirmed diagnosis in order to do the investigation. And then they went into great detail about the case investigation process for foodborne illnesses. So if anybody wants to check that out, please do. And then we're starting to have discussions around wildfire smoke. I hate that it occurs during the summertime because it prevents you guys from being as involved in the preparedness discussions and activities. And oftentimes we're in the middle of wildfire smoke season when everybody returns to school. I provided the links here. There have been no real changes to the guidance that was updated and provided last year. The region, so all 4 of our counties are working on a wildfire smoke response plan, and it lists schools among many organizations and agencies that will be included in wildfire smoke response. And so there's really going to be a launch in early June on that, and ongoing discussions I know some groups are having conversations about with various stakeholders. So if your districts haven't heard about this, want to hear more, please let me know. Let Chelan Douglas and our regional health jurisdictions know, and we can work together on that. And we can have an update, and we'll be ready to go in August and September when you guys are returning back. But throughout the summer, if you have questions, please contact us about wildfire smoke. And that's it. We got some questions. Let me look over at the chat here. Great. Amber, yeah, tularemia case. Bitten by a deer fly. Yeah, so tularemia is a febrile illness, can be a real stumper, and can be transmitted by ticks, but any animal that bites, typically a rodent, but any other wildlife that has tularemia can then transmit it. I guess only tularemia case and favorite tularemia case so far was a kid that I diagnosed, or was on the team that diagnosed in residency. This 13, 14-year-old boy was finally sent to the hospital by his pediatrician, who just couldn't figure out this febrile illness that he had been having for 2 or 3 weeks, and he had swollen glands and was really miserable with it. And nobody could figure it out. And then somebody asked him about some of his activities over the past month, and said, "Yeah, I went on this camping trip with my cousin, and we skinned about 80 rabbits." And that clued us in that it was probably a wildlife exposure, and tested, and they're confirmed the diagnosis of tularemia. But he depopulated in eastern North Carolina county of rabbits. That's where he got tularemia. Let's see. Good. Some ticks already coming up on the playground. So, keeping the tick, great question, Amber. I'm sure Grant County gets just as many, if not more, questions about what do we do with this tick as Chelan Douglas does. Knowing what type of tick can perhaps aid in diagnosis. If it's not a black-legged tick, then you don't have to worry about Lyme disease. But the caveat there is that you could always have been bitten by a different tick than the one that you caught. If you were in an area and contracted a tick, maybe you contracted another tick and didn't realize it. And so it's not a 100% accurate diagnostic tool to check the tick, either the type of tick or check the tick for illness. So Public Health Labs does have an entomologist that can tell you what type of tick it is if you want to go through the trouble of sending it in, but they can't check the tick for a specific illness. So it does take some time, and I think if you're concerned enough about Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, something else like that, the patient ought to have doxycycline on board anyway, and then you are testing the patient with acute and convalescent titers to see if they've actually contracted the illness. So not that helpful, but I know a lot of people really want to keep those ticks and send them in.
That's what we used to tell people in old days, but I agree, it's not always helpful. I know DOH, they used to always want to get all the ticks they could get. I don't know if that's still their stance.
Yeah, I'll ask him about that. It's a good question for surveillance, right?
Yeah.
Testing for surveillance is important. So yeah, next time I want to call with DOH, I'll ask them. And we can send them a bunch of ticks if they want.
All right. Well, are there any other questions for Dr. Wallace? Well, if there are, please put them in the chat, and we'll make sure that he gets those and make sure we get the response back to you. I did want to give Amber a moment because she did have an announcement for the nurses. But Amber, just so you know, it was a little hard to hear you when you were speaking just a moment ago.
Okay, I wanted to switch to my laptop instead of my speaker. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think
I can
that
hear
would
you.
be okay.
Okay. I just, Dr. Brezhny, our health officer here in Grant County, is doing a presentation on measles, the measles situation, for healthcare on June 2nd. So I just shared a flyer for that for everyone. We're inviting healthcare community, including school nurses. So just hoping to get, as many people on that as possible. We'll send out a Zoom link to all those who RSVP'd via email. So just send an email to me, I think is who she has it to, and we'll send you the Zoom link sometime next week before the meeting on the 2nd.
Amber,
Sorry.
do you know if that will be recorded?
I'm trying to remember if we've recorded those in the past. It's kind of, I don't know if you remember when Dr. Brezhny used to do the Monday morning updates. I don't know what's going on with that. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I must have switched to my laptop. I'm not sure if we're gonna record that. I will find out.
Okay.
I don't know if we've done that in the past, but I will find that out sometime
Okay,
before then.
thank you.
Other than that, Grant County didn't have any other updates other than, same with pretty much the same things going on here as Dr. Wallace mentioned. We're still seeing a handful of pertussis. It's definitely slowed down a bit. We're seeing some new communities affected, and just trying to be prepared for summer, and we're also going to do a little debrief with school nurses here in Grant County after Dr. Brezhny's presentation on measles, just to kind of go over the school, the role that schools play in measles response. So we'll have that on the Thursday after that, on the 5th. So we just sent out an invite. So
Awesome. And we
Amber,
can make sure
thanks.
that oh, sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
Dr. Wallace.
thanks so much for publicizing that, Amber, and pushing it out. I'm going to try and attend. But if other jurisdictions, either Chelan, Douglas, or Okanagan, I can speak for, are interested in huddling after that, or huddling anytime to think about measles preparedness, please let us know.
Thank you both so much. We'll make sure that that flyer gets out into a follow-up email as well. So anybody that misses this, the live Zoom right now, will still have access to that. So thank you for putting that out there, and thank you for your time today, both Dr. Russell or Dr. Wallace and Amber. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
thanks for having
Thanks.
us.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, we're going to turn the time over to Kathy for our school nurse updates.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's so nice to see you again. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, and we're going to go through some regional updates this morning and some state updates. So let me go ahead and set this to slideshow and give me a thumbs up when it's ready. Very good. Okay, so let's go through some updates here for the rest of the presentation this morning. So first of all, I want to wish everybody again a very happy School Nurse Week, School Nurse Day. We had a wonderful program here. Thanks to Elena and Sheila. We had a wonderful event, and look at all those smiling faces. It was so nice to see everybody that was able to come in person, and I just really appreciated everybody who could make that extra effort to be here. So we had a great program. program, so thank you. And then we had some really wonderful, just to share a little bit, there were some really wonderful expressions of thanks from different schools throughout the area. And these are just some examples. I would guess there were others. I hope that your school district took the opportunity to say thank you and let you know how much they appreciate you and all the things that you're doing for the district. So just some quick notes there of some of the examples. All right, and so let's go into some ESD updates. So first of all, just to let you know about some open positions that are available, if there's some interest there, or if you happen to know other nurses who are looking for opportunities in school nursing, we're going to be having an open position next year coming up at the Oroville School District. So that has been a full-time position in the past, and we're just waiting to hear what that position will look like for the 25-26 school year. Quincy School District has announced a part-time position. They'll be looking for someone to provide some support, approximately 2 hours a day, 5 days a week for an individual student. That position also, as of yesterday, had not been posted yet, so they're just putting out some preliminary information. If you are not planning to come back to your position next year, we really appreciate it if you could give us a heads up. We do provide some support to the school district superintendent or principal, whoever's responsible for doing the job search, making sure that the job description is up to date, helping them if they need help with looking at salary scales throughout the region. So that type of work. So if you are not coming back, please let us know so we can reach out to them and start getting a plan in place for them. This is great news. I just wanted to share, you know, those of you who applied for AEDs through the grant through OSPI, we had several districts: Bridgeport, Lake Chelan, Manson, Moses Lake, Pinnacles Prep, Soap Lake, and Warden. You should all have been notified by OSPI that you were awarded an AED. So this is over on the right-hand side. There was just some of the grant program commitments for those of you who received one. And so some of this documentation will need to be in place, and that includes your site coordinator, having a cardiac emergency response plan, making sure that you have adequate supply of trained staff who can respond with the AED, etc. So Annie will be reaching out to you and or whoever you have identified as that AED coordinator to help get your AED and get all the materials that you need for your program. So congratulations. I think that's great news for our region to get these additional units. Okay, 2 naloxone opportunities. So I just wanted to clarify the types of naloxone free programs that we have available to you. So the first one is our standard DOH program. And this is a program that is set up specifically called Naloxone in Schools. It is really intended for your high school programs. So we've sent out a survey and we've gotten some responses back. And for those of you who need naloxone for your, could be for your high school health room, it could be for your high school emergency kits, it could be for your other offsite programs that involve high school students. If you need a naloxone kit for those programs, please let us know, because we have a supply here and we are happy to ship it to you. We do appreciate it if you could send us back your expired doses. Those doses are being returned to the Department of Health and they are going to be reusing them. So thank you for participating in that program. The second program we have is different than the high school program, and we just refer to it as OEND. It's really the opioid response program, and it's really intended, it's very widespread throughout Washington state, and it allows, kind of sets us up as being a distributor of naloxone. So Department of Health provides us as a program participant with naloxone that we can provide out to the community at no charge. Now, this naloxone from a school-based status, this would be naloxone that you could, as a district, for example, provide to your students. So if you have students who are asking you, you know you have students at high risk, and your policy, you have actually put this into your policy because the law states that school districts fall into this category of being naloxone distributors. So if you have students who need it, maybe you have prom coming up, maybe you have some big party, you know, for graduation coming up, and you have students who are concerned and are asking if they could have some. We have available naloxone to distribute for that as well. So if you have a need like that, please email me or Elena or Sheila and ask us about getting some naloxone to distribute to specifically for your students. And if you have any questions about those programs, please let me know. They are funded differently. So they are two different things, different funding streams. And so we don't really, you know, mix them up, but we partner with DOH on both of those programs. So we have plenty available for you. Okay, so moving ahead. All right, calibration. I'm skipping that one. We don't need it. We're going to talk about calibration later. So school nurse corps data collection. I'm going to just move into the surveys. We have 2 surveys that we have sent to all school nurses throughout the region. One of them is a services feedback survey where we're really asking for your feedback on the type of services that you used through school nurse corps, how well we were able to meet your needs. What other needs do you have? You know, what processes work best for you? It's pretty short survey. The link is here again, and we're going to send it out also by email, just as a quick reminder to please give us feedback, because your feedback really helps us improve the program. So we appreciate that very much. The second survey we send to school nurses is their professional development interests. So we're asking you to consider your goals for next year, to think about what your educational goals are, and then to provide feedback to us about those goals so that we can start planning in advance for the different topics that are going to be presented, and even looking not only at topics presented at large meetings like this, but also individually. So how could we help you set up your own individual goals as well, and make sure that you're getting the training that you need. So those 2 surveys, we'll send them out again as links, but you have the links here in the PowerPoint as well. School administrator surveys, again, we ask them for program feedback. These go out to superintendents, principals, and program administrators who interact with us throughout the school year. And then we also are going to be requesting their 25-26 RN staffing plan. So it's a little separate survey, and the RN staffing plan is required for school nurse corps districts so that we know what is the staffing plan for the nurse for the coming school year. And that data is then used when we start looking at how to allocate our budget for the coming year. So those 2 things will be going out this week to all the school administrators for school nurse corps. We talked a little about this last week, but just some reminders, because we get a variety of requests to purchase things for different school districts. And so one of the really important things about being responsible for your health room is really thinking about your budget. So whatever you're putting together for a budget, there's still some expenses that are going to be coming up even before next year as you think about purchasing supplies, and you think about renewing your CLIA waiver, your medical equipment, whatever it is that you might need to start putting together, what would that look like? A spreadsheet of expenses. So you can share that with your superintendent and your supervisor about what it costs to really manage a health room department. So these are just some ideas of things that you might want to be thinking about that all are going to have some expenses involved. Luckily, you don't have to think about a big expense with naloxone because we continue to have free naloxone available to us. So please take advantage of that. And also we continue to have, at this point, free access to Epi. So that would include both your injectable and your in your nasal doses. There are free opportunities for that. Okay. All right, so diabetes PDA training. A few slides here, and these are largely reminders. Most of our PDA training really in the past is focused on diabetes PDA training. It seems to be the one that people ask for the most. Seizure PDA training is often being done remotely or virtually through the Epilepsy Foundation, but diabetes PDA training is really being done in a variety of ways. So just as some quick reminders about PDA training, if you are working at a school and you have a diabetic student and there's going to be PDAs assigned to that student, please keep in mind that those are parent designated adults. And so when you have told your parent that they're going to have a PDA providing care to their student, then that really means that whoever is assigned to that student needs to be a trained PDA, and they should not be replaced with an untrained person to provide oversight to the student. So when you're thinking along those lines, please make sure that if you have a student and they're going to have a PDA, that you have a sufficient number of PDAs trained to provide support for that student. Because I know that districts sometimes run into difficulties if a PDA calls in sick and there is nobody there to provide support to that student. Now, if as the nurse, you're going to be there every day and you're going to be able to provide support to that student, that's different. But if the nurse is not on site and the student is relying on a PDA to provide services to the student, then it needs to be a trained PDA who does that. So please keep that in mind as you're identifying folks to be serve in that capacity. And then just a reminder about our RCWs and WACs around students with diabetes. You know, students with a life-threatening health condition really need to have their orders in place before they come back to school. So we shouldn't be having kids show up for school with no orders on care management for them. And we should also not be having PDAs providing service to them until they have completed their training, because they're really not really at that point considered a PDA if they haven't been trained. And PDA training is an annual requirement, largely because students' plans can change from year to year. So there could be differences in the care management for the student, but also because it's very difficult for people to remember the different skills and techniques involved in helping that student with diabetes. And so it's always a good idea to have PDAs renew their training on an annual basis. So some mechanisms in place to help you with PDA training. Well, Seattle Children's is certainly an option. Seattle Children's has a complete series of PDA training videos available. And if you want to go that route, you could have people complete those trainings. If you want them to be certificated by Seattle Children's as a PDA, though, they would need to go over to the Sandpoint Clinic to have their skills verification done. So that is a little bit of a dilemma if you don't have folks available to travel over to Seattle to get that completed. The PDA videos are certainly available to everyone, but the skills checklist and the PDA certificate would not be something distributed by Seattle Children's to people who did not have their skills verified by Seattle Children's. Some of you, and so some of our students in our region are Seattle Children's clients. And so certainly this could be an option for them. Other students are coming out of clinics in the Spokane area. If that's the case, then please check in with Spokane. That's always our first, places to go is the office where the student is actually being seen to see what kind of service they can provide in regards to PDA training for staff. So that would be an option. Now, certainly another option is Confluence Health. Confluence Health has offered PDA trainings for our region largely as a courtesy, because many of the students are not really Confluence Health clients. Oftentimes they're coming from other clinic settings, and they are largely seen for their diabetes by either Seattle Children's or out of another facility out of Spokane. So Confluence Health does offer PDA trainings in a couple of ways to provide support for school districts. So one is classroom courses. So the classroom courses are all held in Wenatchee at Confluence Health. And those are really geared for specific groups of PDAs. So for example, if I have a student, one student, and that student has 6 PDAs, then those 6 PDAs should come to that same course, and they are all learning the same information, and they're all going over the same student orders. If I have multiple PDAs, that are seeing multiple kinds of students, then you really need to look at separating them out. And that's largely because the instructors for the course are really there to provide training that's geared on specific plans of care and specific orders and specific treatments for an individual student. So it isn't helpful to have a wide range of different student plans in that training session. It gets quite confusing for the PDAs who are trying to learn how to manage individual students when there are multiple students trying to be covered. So those kind of classes are being, dates are being provided to Sheila. There will be announcements going out about the dates that are available for in-class sessions. And they can be registered in PD Enroller, and we do ask that only people who have registered to attend the class actually attend. So we don't, walk-ins are not appreciated there, because again, we don't really know who those walk-ins are and what their training needs are. Virtual courses are being done now through Confluence Health, and those are being provided by a diabetic educator in the Moses Lake area. And so those are a little bit different. We do ask that you have audio and visual technology set up, because this participants need to be able to see, hear, and participate in the virtual course. And in that case, the skills will need to be verified by the school nurse. And the Confluence Health team will wait until they receive the skills checklist from that nurse before any certificates of completion for PDA training are going to be provided. So a couple of other quick things about these courses. There is some pre-work that Confluence Health requests that all participants complete, and those are the ADA school modules. So Safe at School modules are available, and you can select those Safe at School modules that you want the PDA to complete, because again, they're based on the student's plan of care. So not every module that is provided is even applicable to every student. So you would need to review those plans and see what training that person will need. And then another quick reminder about these is you want to make sure that the student has received the correct, or the Confluence Health has received the correct orders that they need to do the training. So in terms of plans, if you're sending plans to Confluence Health, which they need to get before the course is scheduled, then they're going to need to see the plan that actually contains the medical orders. Last year, I believe they got some plans sent to them, but the plans didn't include any orders. And so it's very difficult for them to know what training is needed for that particular student. And then certainly school nurses can provide PDA training. So if you are comfortable with your diabetic management and you feel comfortable in providing that level of training to PDAs, you certainly are eligible to do that. We do have some recommendations here as far as making sure that you have included all of these things that every PDA needs, whether you're doing the training or not. You need to have the parent agreement form, the employee agreement form. You want to make sure that they have completed their pre-work, whatever Safe at Schools modules they need to complete. You want to have the medical orders and your plans of care available, because you'll be teaching based on those medical orders and plans. You need to have your diabetes skills checklist that are available to you in the OSPI diabetes guidelines. Again, because you're going to need to have those maintained in the student's file, so that someone will be able to tell that PDA training was completed. So your hands-on skill verification can be done with those checklists, and you're going to be doing that work. And then you could do your own. You want to make sure that you've included whatever documentation you expect that the PDA is providing. The other thing I would recommend is that you and the PDA also have a communication plan. How often are you checking in with them? How often are they checking in with you, to make sure that they are following the plan of care that that either you have created or the medical orders as written, so that you know that the student is getting the care that they need. And that's because as the school nurse, you remain responsible for the student and the student's plan of care. Even though you have a PDA, providing assistance to the student, it doesn't release the school or the school nurse of responsibility over the support of that student. So please do contact us if you have questions about that, or you need some more support. You can certainly find a lot of those materials in the Google Drive under the diabetes toolkit, where you find a lot of all the PDA forms and a PDA file that contains a lot of the things that you're going to need for your training programs. National, state, and regional updates. We did send out a update from Catherine Graff, and I just want to reiterate that if you are not on school module, this is the excellent time to ensure that you get signed up for it. And that's because due to reductions in staffing that are now impacting the Department of Health, the school module team is being impacted and numbers of support people are being reduced. So they're really going to have limited time. They will not be able to take on any new, if you haven't done it yet and you're thinking that you might do it later because you want to do it for next year, you're going to want to get your request in now, because you want to get on that list to get help. Any requests that come in after August 15th are going to be moved into the 2026 school year and will certainly be delayed in getting done. So if this is a great time to get signed up. Also, if you are going to be changing your position, so if you're going to be moving out of your role, then you want to make sure that you complete that rescinding delegation form. You received the link and the document, and again, we've saved these tools for you in the Google Drive, but you want to rescind your delegation related to school module at the end of the school year. And you want to request that your name be removed from the access to this. And then somebody at your school, make sure that you identify somebody that you know will be at the school next year who is going to have access to the system. Because if you're not there and you don't know who the school nurse will be, somebody there needs to have access to school module. So let Department of Health know who that will be. And then when a new school nurse becomes available, that person will also be added to that list of access. So, and all of that is here. So all of that information is on this slide, and it's really, really busy. So we're not going to go through all of this information, but that's what we're asking about. And just as a reminder, the first thing as we talk about their decrease in staffing and support, if you want help from them uploading your module, uploading your rosters, then please reach out to them. There's a link here to the roster upload quick reference guide. And if you are going to be wanting help from Department of Health to do that, again, please let them know quickly so that you can get added to that list and you don't get overlooked here in this work. So, all right. Immunization updates. Well, Dr. Wallace did a great job talking about measles updates, so I'm not going to spend much time on this, but if you have not watched next year's Department of Health update to immunization webinar, the link is here. If you want contact hours, you do need to create a Train account and watch it through the Train system, but it's also just readily available. So if you just want to watch the video, you can click to it right on Department of Health and it's posted right there. So easy to get to. Here's a couple of links to some relatively new information about measles preparedness for schools. And it's just a couple of pages. You can see it just came out in April of 2025. So this is the brand new guidelines on measles for school districts. So if you have questions about that, after you have a chance to review it, please reach out and we'll help you with it. Another couple of quick resources. One of these is an on-demand webinar, and the other is some more general information that has great photos on it. If you're not familiar with what measles looks like, you can take a look at these as resources, and then certainly Dr. Brezhny's program that's coming up is an excellent opportunity to get updates on both regional and national measles status. Environmental health at Washington DOH has been busy. They have created some new materials, and I wanted to make sure that you are aware of those. So they've updated some of their guidelines on environmental health and safety for schools. So there's a link here for these. They've also updated their ventilation and air quality materials and added a couple of things. And so one of the things they added was about portable air cleaners, and then they added some material about integrated pest management. So you can link to those. Again, we have them on the Google Drive, and they are still continuing to work on doing updates to materials and training materials for schools. And so a lot of this is really summer-based activity. They're going to try to get as much created so that it's ready to go for you in the fall. So watch for updates in the fall about new materials and guidelines. But do take a look. For those of you who do use portable air cleaners, make sure you are looking at these guidelines to help you with that. The standing order for EPI has been updated. So just as an FYI, if you are interested in getting the 1 milligram dose of EPI, it's now included on that order form. And remember that you could register for the NEFI program for the free EPI. So the free NEFI product. If you want either the 1 or 2 milligram doses, you can sign up for that program and should be able to receive those. Another quick reminder from Department of Health, and that's to take a look at your CLIA waiver and make sure that you have renewed your CLIA waiver. If your license says that it's set to expire June 30th, 2025, you're going to want to take a look at that and make sure that you don't need to submit a request to renew that. And so there's just some information here about that. Remember, if you are going to be doing any testing, if you're going to be doing any CLIA waived testing in the school, and that would include your diabetic management tasks like urine testing, blood testing, then you do need to have a current CLIA waiver. So it is not specific to COVID, it's any of those waived tests. So do make sure you have a current license going into the new year. Sex trafficking awareness and prevention. This bulletin just came out. So this is a new requirement. I know some of you are involved in comprehensive sexual health, and this is a new requirement for school districts related to instruction on sex trafficking awareness and prevention. So this is for students grades 7 through 12. So if you're actively involved in providing that instruction, or you would like more information about it, OSPI is putting out new resources and guidelines for how to accomplish that. The adrenal insufficiency crisis and PDAs, that bill has passed, and so there will be guidelines coming out. I would just encourage you to take a look at the bill. You can click here for the full text. It's going to amend one of the RCWs, so it's essentially adding another PDA to available resources in the schools. We have probably, it's estimated, about 200 students in Washington State, and here we have one within our own region who does require this medication. And so this is an opportunity when the school nurse is not going to be in the building every day to provide emergency care for that student, then a PDA would be necessary in order to provide the Solu-Cortef. So PDA forms will be created, PDA training will be looked at to see what could be done to support you. And that will probably, that work will be done over the summer months. Extending the SPED services. So this is, we've probably touched on this in the past, but this bill has passed and been signed, and it has to do with extending special education services. So they used to be conclude when the student turned 21, but that really was not in compliance with federal law. And so our state law has been revised to make sure that we are in compliance. And that means that students are able to receive services through the year that they're turning 22. So just a little extension there. And so this is just a little bit about PDAs, and I'm going to let you read this. So this is just reminders again about PDAs. And I am going to stop sharing for a minute.
Kathy, there were a couple of questions in the chat. so we'll wait until
Well,
you're,
go ahead and ask.
okay. Danitza asked a question to the group. How often do you all upload your new rosters to have school module update for your school? Once a yearly? I did this once last year and want to make sure I'm up to the standards on that. Ben replied that he does it once a year for her.
Mhm.
But Sarah Kruger asked, don't they have to have a nurse as the primary person for the IIS? If a nurse leaves, wouldn't they have to rescind delegation or oversight for IIS? For
I think
having the
those were
school module.
There are, so just to clarify, there are tasks that can be done by school staff without delegation in the IIS. If you guys aren't aware of what those are, we can send them to you. But that information is available from Department of Health. So there are tasks. We got into this question recently and working with Debbie and Laura at the OMAC School District and received, very nice explanation of the different elements that a non-licensed person would be able to have access to and what are the differences, where would you have to have an RN involved in the process and what could be done without it. So in general, yes, you do want to have a nurse involved as quickly as you can, but what that's the value. That's one of the why we need school nurses in our buildings, is because you need a licensed person to manage some of these tasks.
Just as a off topic, but still part of what you have presented, sorry. Donna from Lake Chelan wanted to make sure that we get it out there that you had mentioned the open positions for nurses in the region. They are looking for a substitute nurse up
Perfect.
in Lake Chelan.
All right.
And then Amber McCoy from Grant County wanted to just put out there that the bats and rabies resources for schools that DOH recently shared are great too.
Yes, they are excellent. And all of those tools are in the Google Drive for you. So if you go under infectious diseases, you'll find a breakdown of all types of materials from Department of Health, and that would include all of the recent materials they put out on bats and rabies. So a couple more quick things. School Nurse Advisory is looking for new participants. So this is a great opportunity. We're looking for somebody within our region. Ben served in this role for a few years, and we really appreciated having his voice at the table and having him participate and share his experiences as a school nurse at his school, representing the rural regions, representing smaller districts. So if this is something that would be of interest to you, please consider. Some of the things we talk about are like what Dr. Wallace talked about is, well, a lot of work gets done, or looked at or talked about in the summer. And so this is kind of an opportunity to stay in the loop with Department of Health and school nursing and being that voice. So if you are interested, there's an application here to fill out, and I would encourage people to do that if they are interested. Okay, I am going to, I certainly apologize. I don't know why I am clicking through slides like this. I think I am there. Okay, so upcoming dates, things to be cognizant of. We've got upcoming dish. Those of you who need help with your cleanup for your health codes, there's an opportunity on the 29th. We have another suicide prevention program coming up for those of you who have your ESA and need to complete suicide prevention training. Best School Nurse Mentor Session on 6/9. Providence, fill your toolbox for school nursing. So we're already getting into the summer program. So we've got Providence has set their date for 8/15. Mary Bridge is setting their school nurse date for 8/13. We have orientation coming up 8/19 8:15 and 8 through 8:20, and CPR and Stop the Bleed, and first aid coming up on 8:22. So information about all of those programs is available in the school nurse drive.
And Kathy, we should probably add the virtual NASN, July 7 through 9. Was that on there?
No, but again, yeah, everything's in our calendar. So please take a look and see, what you have an interest in attending this year. And yes, NASN is an excellent opportunity as well. So NASN virtual that Sheila's talking about is a great opportunity. We have one ESA course scheduled for those of you who are moving into completing your ESA. This one's through PLU. We don't have dates yet for the WSU. Oh, yes, we do. We do have dates for the WSU one is coming up as well. So again, we have these all posted in the calendar for you to take a look at. Okay. So we're at an end and it is after 11 o'clock. So thank you for those who are able to stay on. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. Just encourage you to get outside, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy spring, and looking forward to summer, I'm sure. So thank you all for a wonderful year. And I can't tell you how much I have appreciated working with you. So this is our last meeting, isn't it, Lena? Yeah, last
It
meeting
is. It's
of
the
the year.
last
So
one of the school year.
yeah. So Annie, so I just like to say how much I appreciate all of you. It's been just a wonderful opportunity that I felt I've had working with each of you, and I can't tell you how much I've appreciated you. So I wish you all the best moving forward, and you're going to have great opportunities ahead. So wonderful. I want you to enjoy life, and I want you to know how much you're appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy, you should check the chat. They're wanting to make sure how much they appreciate you too. Quick question from Penny Mayo. Is there anything that we need to log in to for proof of the meeting? Oh, Penny, were you talking about this meeting or were you talking about one of the events that's coming up on the calendar that Kathy was sharing?
I'll be marking attendance for this regional update this afternoon or in the morning. So you should be able
Yes,
to
this
see that tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be on this. So Penny said it was yes to this meeting. So anyway, we always do the last slide for anyone that goes back and watches the meeting recording. They'll be able to see this last one. But it does have information about collecting or claiming your clock hours. Like Sheila said, she does take attendance. And so when you go back and watch these recordings, we have you fill out those surveys so that way we know you've seen these recordings and we can take attendance that way. So it does mean that you fill out a survey for the meeting, and then there's the PD enroller survey as well. But we appreciate the feedback. That really helps me to look for presenters that will provide information and resources that you could use, so we can make this time together really effective for you. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your school year. If there's anything that we can do to help you out, please make sure you stay in contact with us so we can help you.